first guest post-COVID is Big Tony this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Tommy.
Just to introduce you, because we'll go to the questions in a minute. Big Tony, you're the managing director now, yeah, of Magna Carta?
Sales and marketing director.
Sales and marketing director, yes. Now, you're not a lawyer.
Nope.
Because Brits can't be lawyers unless they study law in Thailand and in Thai. But you probably know more about the law than most of the barristers who work for you.
I don't think so, but
How many barristers have you got?
Around about 17.
Right, so if you get any questions today that you can't answer, we can always play a song while you call somebody to give you the answer. Correct. So that whatever we put out is going to be
100%.
100%. We won't use names, because that's the only fair way to do it. The first one. A friend went to Canada in 2019 and since has not been able to return to Thailand due to a very serious health issues. He wants to sell his vehicle that's in his name, which is stored at my residence here in Pattaya. The registration and insurance has been kept up to date. How can he sell his vehicle without signing a document?
The different departments have different ways that you can do things. For the vehicles, they have their specific power of attorney. So what would happen is that who was ever going to act for him on this side would have to go to the vehicle office, get the specific power of attorney, fill it out, send it over to him. He would then have to sign it in front of a notary public lawyer. He would then need to get it legalised and then stamped to the Thai embassy and then send the document back.
So in Canada he'd do all that?
Correct.
Yeah, right.
He'd do all that. And then he'd send the document back with the vehicle registration.
So it is possible?
Yes, 100%. I've done 3 or 4 in the last couple of months.
Right. Second part of his question is, he's also got 800,000 baht in his bank account. Well, I'd like to get to that. As he used to stay here on retirement visa. How can those monies be transferred to his account in Canada?
It can't.
Sorry?
It can't. The bank is very, very specific. If he made a power of attorney over to say, let's me, and he took it to the Thai embassy in Canada and sent it to me and I went to the bank will still not release the money. The only way the bank will release the money is if the person signs in front of them. So, for example, if he opened up the account in his name and he signed and said, look, if something happens to me, I want Tommy to be able to come down and access the account and sign it in front of the officer, right, then the money can go. But there's the banks have their own special protocol, what they do, and they just will not accept a power of attorney. It has to be in front of their officer.
I suppose the only way that he could do it, I suppose, is if he had a transfer limit of, say, 50,000 baht a day, and he had online banking.
Yes, he can do that.
He could transfer money, 50,000 baht a day, to his friend, who could then send it to him.
Yeah, but the internet banking now, you can transfer overseas anyway, so he should be able to transfer it to himself.
That's interesting.
The only thing is that if he hasn't got a payee on his internet banking, then to put that, normally they send you an OTP for security.
Oh, yes, on your phone.
His phone would have to be linked to that account as well and have to be roaming in Canada.
Okay, so well, that's answered the question there, isn't it?
Yes.
Let me see if I can find you the next question. I like putting you to the test.
Okay.
Please give a summary of the Thai inheritance law. The guy's asking, the writer in is asking, what if you die intestate? Would wills written under foreign laws be respected here? Is there a compulsory inheritance for dependents and anything else you deem to be relevant and important?
Okay, so when you pass away in Thailand, the easiest way to do it is if you made a will. You either make a will in Thailand or you make a will overseas. If you make a will overseas, you can still take that will to the Thai court and get the judge to authenticate it and follow the terms and conditions of the will. If you die without a will, there is the intestate law. There's many people that can inherit from your estate, but they're on different levels. So normally you don't get past the first, second or third level. So for example, on the first level is your wife, but you have to be legally registered marriage.
Right.
Your children, your mother and your father. So basically what would happen is that if you passed away and you had a wife and you had 2 children and your mother and father, what would happen is that 50% of the estate would go to your wife because that comes under the joint asset rule, and the other 50% of the estate would go between your wife, your 2 children and your mother and father.
Now that's going to be really complicated if they live overseas.
Well, the thing is that without a will you have to prove everything. And so you have to prove, for example, if your mother and father have died, you have to prove that to the court. You have to show the death certificates. And so it's a lot easier just making a will.
Well, I know I did my will with you.
Yes.
And without going into details, because there's nothing to leave anyway. Doing my will with you, I was surprised when I said to you, I want to do a will, here's a list of what I want to do. And you said, right, I need copies of this, all these documents. And I'm like, why would you need them? You don't need them to do the will. And your answer was, no, I don't. But when you die, then we will need them.
Yeah, because the thing about the will is that you make the will and it's a valid document, but it's not enforceable until you die.
Right.
So therefore, if you have a mistake on the will and you die, you can't rectify the mistake.
Right, but if you've got all the documents in front of you, like if you say I left something to my daughter, you wanted a copy of her ID, because that way you've got all the paperwork ready, so that the minute I snuff it, you can start the process for doing a will.
Well, the reason we want a copy of her ID is to make sure that she's listed correctly on the will, because if we make a mistake and we put the wrong ID number or spell her name incorrectly, and then when we put the will to the court, we have to show the ID of the heir, and if the ID is different to the name on the will, then we have to prove that she is that person.
That's a nightmare.
So that's why we take all the original documents. You can't make a mistake on the will because you can't rectify it once you've passed away.
Well, that's true.
But we've also had instances where the will has been made in Thai and that person can be translated 2 or 3 different ways. And so what we've done is that we've put all their 3 names on the will.
Oh, okay.
This is left to Mr. Arthur, Mr. Ather, Mr. Offer, and so then we've covered all the eventualities.
Ah, yes. Okay. As we put his brain to the test one more time, you ready for this one?
I'm ready.
Okay. This is coming in from a gentleman, we'll just call him Peter. How would I stand to claim money back for a house I built in Thailand? I'm divorced, but I've got statements of money transfers to build the place. All the necessary paperwork.
Well, I suppose it depends on what you put in the divorce agreement when you got divorced. When you get divorced, the court or the AMPA asks you 4 main questions. Do you both agree to get divorced? Are there any children? If so, who has custody? Are there any assets of the marriage? And is there any ongoing maintenance? So if there's any assets of the marriage, it has to be declared there.
So it's sorted out before you get divorced?
Yeah, correct. So at the end of the day, he said he's got a house, so I'm assuming that the house and the land is in his wife's name. So if that's the case, then it should have been dealt with before he got divorced. If it hasn't been dealt with, then it's in her name. But the issue being here again is that if you're a foreigner, years ago and many years ago, if a Thai lady got married and she changed her name to the foreigner, she was stopped from buying land for a short period of time. And what happened, there was an uproar because they are Thai national, they are allowed to buy land, of course. So what happened then, the Land Office brought out this internal policy, which is that if the married Thai lady to a foreigner is going to purchase land in her name, then the foreigner has to sign a disclaimer to say that the money to buy this is nothing to do with him and it belongs to his wife 100%. So now you have a conflict because you have the joint asset law, which means that anything you buy during a marriage is split 50-50. And now you have this piece of paper signed by the husband saying that he confirms the money to buy this land is owned by his wife 100%.
Right.
And that's the problem. The Land Office won't transfer without this paper. So if the land and house was owned by the wife, there would have been a paper. Even if the foreigner doesn't realise he signed it, he would have signed something because it's all in Thai anyway.
So if you've got a conflict between these 2 rules, which one prevails? Can you still get some money?
Well, let's put it this way. I had a client many years back. It wasn't actually a client of mine. It was just something that was told to me where they went into the court and they was getting divorced and there was a land and house. And he stood up and said, this is joint assets. And the wife's lawyer showed a piece of paper to say, no, you sign a disclaimer, this belongs to me 100%. So he turned around and said, yes, but I had to sign that because the land officer said if I didn't sign this, it couldn't be transferred into my name. So I signed it.
So that's fraud.
So what happened, the judge turned around and said, well, look, if you want this in the joint asset pot because you bought it during the marriage, I can put it in a joint asset pot, but you've just stood in open court and said that you've made a false declaration to a government officer, which is a criminal offence. Yeah. So what do you want? I'm going to have to report you if you want to do it that way. So obviously it was withdrawn and the wife took it.
So it's a difficult one. The last one we got for you this morning is a recording, which we tried to play, and I've got to press that button, and I think we'll be able to hear this.
Hi, quick question. I hope you can hear me. I have had 11 years with my partner. We're not married. I've always paid the accommodation and looked after family and even her mortgage. But after 11 years and finding out now that I'm second best, she's requesting some kind of legal settlement. I say we're not married, we've got no kids on either side, the family are not pressurising, and I'm just wondering if she's just hoping for a free handout.
Is that, well, that's, did you get the, to give, in case that didn't go out too well on the radio because it's rather quiet, what he's saying is that he lived with a woman for 11 years, paid all the bills. They lived like a husband and wife. It's not working out anymore. He paid her bills, paid accommodation, all the bills. They're now splitting up, and she's demanding or asking for some money.
Okay.
As a settlement. Is there such a thing as common law marriage in this country?
No, there isn't. Thailand doesn't recognise common law marriage, but it recognises partnership. So basically what they've done is that they've lived together as husband and wife, but they haven't registered the marriage. Now, she's not entitled to anything under that law because, like I say, Thailand doesn't recognise common law. But there is something called a partnership law. For example, let's say that a husband bought a house and was renting out the house, and you had to do some work in the house, and she helped him, and she was at home taking care of the house while he was out doing the work. Then that could be derived that income was due to the partnership that they had together. So it's not saying she can get the house, but any income from that house from rental, if she can prove that she helped him, it could come under the partnership law.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's guaranteed, but it's just something that I've seen when they go into the court, when they haven't registered the marriage, they can't go after common law, so they go after the partnership that, well, even though we stay together, we didn't register the marriage, but we was living like husband and wife. I did the duties as a wife, so my husband could go and earn money, so therefore I'm entitled to something.
So, because she stayed at home and was a housewife, she could actually claim some money off him?
Yes, but it's not going to be the same as if she was his real wife. She's not going to be able to claim half the assets or anything like that, but she might be entitled to claim for some kind of payment for doing the duties that she did while they were together.
11 years of duties?
Basically.
Wow. Okay, that's a new one to me, I have to say.